So in the last session, we finished off with GHT. And GHT is the gestural hemispheric tendency. Somebody looks right positive or left positive. And that's pretty much how we're going to sum that up. And with GHT, we don't really need to know how to ask questions or anything, because it's typically something that comes out normally and naturally in conversations. But we can ask very specific questions if we need to have a point of reference to see which way they look or which hand they gesture with when they're recalling positive information. And GHT, if we just see them look one way for negative information, they look this way for negative information, I automatically know that that's the positive side. So I don't need to keep asking until I get positive stuff, especially if I'm dealing with somebody who's kind of a pity-seeking behavior type of person, and they might be complaining a lot. Next, we have something called shutter speed. And it's a great video example of this that I will bring up, or I will send, or I'll include it down below. And the shutter speed is how fast the eyelid moves when a person is engaged in a conversation. How fast is the eye shut and then open back up again? So blink rate, if you recall, was a measurement of stress. Shutter speed is a measurement of fear. And if there's one thing fear does, it increases the speed of the body and makes the body try to appear smaller than it is. So shutter speed, if you think of an animal that's fearful all the time, like a chihuahua, the eyelid closing and opening is very quick. So fearful animals who are worried about keeping their eyes closed and being attacked by a predator might have that very rapid motion of the eyelid because the fear increases and they're decreasing the amount of time their eyes are shut. We think about another dog that's not scared, like a pit bull or a Rottweiler, and there's a sound in the house. The Chihuahua's eyelids will speed up, the Rottweiler won't. The head will pick up really quickly and turn towards the noise, and the Chihuahua and the Rottweiler will casually pick it up, if at all. So we see that fear increases speed with muscular movements in the body. And just as an aside, since the people that we speak to are already profiling and reading nonverbal communication from us on an animal level, the faster you move, the more you are communicating fear to the person that you're speaking to, your customers, your clients, or whoever you're dealing with. So one rule of thumb I would write here if you're taking notes is to never move faster than you could if you were in a swimming pool or if you were underwater. And make that the gesture movement. One person who's mastered the art of this, absolute master of it, politics aside, was President Obama. His speeches, his interviews, he never moved fast. Everything was very relaxed and slow and coordinated. Pupil dilation is next. So our pupils dilate and constrict, typically in response to the lighting conditions of wherever we are. And they do that because we're trying to limit the amount of light or let in more light. They get bigger to let in more light. But if we have a constant lighting condition, like we're in an office setting, I'm standing outside and the sun is out. So we have a constant lighting condition. I'm in a restaurant or something. Given a constant lighting condition, the pupils will still get bigger and smaller, but in response to something called emotional arousal. So our pupils will dilate when we become aroused. This is not sexually necessarily, but it does include that. So when we're talking about something about our product, a feature of our product that the person really likes, or we're saying something the person really likes, especially if we use really good language to describe it, we'll see the pupils dilate. And this happens about 90% of the time when we hear something we really like, our pupils do dilate. And our pupils constrict when we hear information that we don't like. And this is a really good indicator. And it's a lot easier to do with people with lighter colored eyes. The iris of the eye is a lighter color. And a cool piece of research they did for this, they showed men and women 4 different photographs. One was a naked woman, one was a naked man, One was a woman holding a baby. And the final photo was a nasty, bloody photo of a guy being tortured to death with barbed wire. And it showed universally in almost 100% of the cases, which is very rare in any kind of psychology study, that the pupils dilated in response to the member of the opposite sex. Women dilated the most in response to the woman holding a baby, and the naked dude got second place. But our pupils universally constricted in response to the person that was being tortured, the nasty photo that we didn't want to see. So our pupils will constrict when we see things we don't want to. So that's our brain telling us to let in less light and take in less information. And our pupils also dilate in response to threats. And this is an evolutionary thing. So if there's a person kicks the door in an office building and starts shooting the room up, everyone's pupils in the entire room will get giant. They will expand to their maximum extent to let in as much light as possible so they can fight, they can find a hiding spot, or they can escape. So those animal behaviors are still in us. So the pupils are really easy to see. That's something I would recommend spending a few days on, at least a few days, taking a look at. And I'll show you how to piece all of this together in a way that's not overwhelming at the end of this training. Next, we have something called confirmation glances. And this is it's important in police work and it's important to interrogators. But just for the sake of this course, we're going to consider confirmation glances a status indicator. If I'm a police officer and I walk up to a group of kids and I ask the entire group, why don't you guys tell me what happened? And a couple of people kind of glance over at one person in the group, I know who to ask, or I know who to separate from the group and then ask. And it's the same thing in a sales or persuasion scenario or in the courtroom. When someone makes a tiny gesture of a visual gesture towards another person before they answer a question, that's a big deal. And that's a good indicator that that person that they looked at is either the person that we need to speak to or the decision maker. So that's a confirmation glance. And let's talk about this eyebrow flash really quick. The eyebrow flash is a way that primates, all primates, this is chimpanzees, bonobos, apes, monkeys, everybody that we're related to, communicate being non-threatening and friendly and open. So this is good behavior. We want to see the person doing an eyebrow flash, especially in the beginning of a conversation. The eyebrow flash is the opposite of anger. If you just right now make an anger facial expression, it pulls your eyebrows down and together. So the eyebrow flash is the opposite of that. It's up and apart. And the up and apart is a way to indicate to other primates, I'm not threatening, I'm friendly, and I'm completely open. A cool thing that you can do, that you can turn this into a tactic, it's obviously a fun trick to do, because if you do this to somebody, like you go into Starbucks and say thank you as you're grabbing your coffee, or you're introduced to anybody that's new, or you meet a new customer, if you raise your eyebrows up and perform an eyebrow flash as you make the introduction or in the beginning of the conversation, 90% of people will return that eyebrow flash without knowing that they did it at all. And I thought that was really cool. And it's a fun trick to play. But in the end, we need to do something with it. So we all have seen research. We've seen these TED Talks and lectures on YouTube that say when a person smiles more, they create more serotonin, more dopamine in their brain. If you're feeling sick and you sit up straighter, you increase your posture, you'll actually start to feel better over time. And this is true because our bodies also create psychology. And it's the reverse of what we're learning in this course. So what we're learning in this course is to see what's going on the inside by looking at the outside. And now by controlling or moving the outside, we're manufacturing a psychological feeling on the inside. So if you do this at the beginning of the conversation, within 2 seconds of meeting that person, you have already made them copy your behavior, number one. And number two, you've already made them exhibit some sign of being open, non-threatening, and vulnerable or friendly, which is pretty cool. That's 1 second into the conversation. And this is the beginning of something that we teach in the behavioral entrainment class, or the influence part of our course, where there's something called behavioral entrainment, where we're leading this person down a nonverbal following pathway from the very beginning. And it's not the matching and mirroring at all. So the eyebrow flash does create that behavior in the other person. So our bodies do respond to the environment. And I'm willing to bet the last time you made a big decision, you weren't leaning back in a chair. So when you bought a house, you made a decision to propose to somebody, or sleep with somebody, or buy a new car, or anything. That was a big decision. When you made the decision, I'm willing to bet that you were not leaning back in a chair, you were leaning forward or standing up. And we associate that forward-leaning movement with making decisions. So another rule of thumb I would give you for this slide here is to never, ever ask someone to do something while their back is touching a chair. Your back's on a chair, you need to get them to lean forward. However you can. Hand them a phone, a paper, a pencil. Ask them to look at a document, and you don't slide it all the way across the table, and you have to get them to lean forward to do it.